You're listening to CoachingCues podcast, where experts all around the world answer your most burning questions surrounding the wide topic of strength training. Every week we tackle the what, the why, and the how of one specific topic in just 15 minutes. Straight to the point, no fluff. So, without further ado, let's get straight into this week's episode.
Hello and welcome back to CoachingCues. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about augmenting eccentric overload training and its effects on 1RM bench press performance. My name is Samuel Montalvo. I currently hold a Ph.D. in training conditioning and currently work as a research fellow for the Clinical Applied Physiology Lab within the Doctor of Physical Therapy program and Rehabilitation Science Department at the University of Texas at El Paso. And let's talk a little bit of eccentric training and some eccentric training methods. So we take a very popular exercise such as a bench press or the squat. Eccentric motion would be when you're bringing the bar down. And the concentric would be when you bring the bar up, right, to finish the movement. So some of the very popular training methods for eccentric training is a tempo eccentric load. So the tempo, just as the name implies, you give about a time interval. So when you're doing a bench press, you may bring the bar down for 5 seconds. So you'll count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the bar is down and you bring it up as fast as you can in the concentric phase. And this has been shown to improve muscular hypertrophy and overall strength and performance. A very popular method is the inertial eccentric training. And for the inertial, you typically see a flywheel. So this a rope would be attached to the flywheel from one end, and the other end would be attached to either a bar, your arm, or maybe a belt for squat. So typically, most of the exercise has been seen with the squat. So you would start with in a squatted position, and you'll come up as fast as you can, and this will make the flywheel rotate in one direction. And the inertial, the flywheel or the rotating wheel will rotate in the opposite direction when you're squatting down, and you're supposed to resist this inertia. And this has been shown to improve also hypertrophy. Has been shown to improve vertical jump, sprint speed. And so on and so forth, has been shown to be a great tool for rehabilitation settings and performance. In terms of augmenting eccentric overload, so how that one differs from the other eccentric training. So the augmented means that we can use loads greater than 100% of the 1RM, so like super maximal loads during the eccentric phase. So we typically use eccentric hooks, or just hooks that are attached to the two endings of the bar. And then these hooks are wide enough that allow us to put extra weight on it. And what happens is you typically puts some maximal load between 80 and 90% of your 1RM in the bar. Then you attach the hooks to the two endings of the bar, and then these hooks will have extra weight on it. And as you come down, the hooks will hit the ground and come off detached from the bar, leaving you again with just the 80 and 90% of the 1RM. So it will be more like 110 with the hooks and the bar and the eccentric phase. And as soon as they detach and hit the ground, you'll come up with just 80 and 90%. So at the time in 2018, my friend and co-author of this paper, or the paper that we're going to be discussing today, Lance Gruber, had the idea of doing eccentric training with a population that he had access to, and this population was a group of powerlifters in El Paso, Texas. At the time, he needed to do a thesis project, and we were. I remember I was training with the eccentric hooks. I was doing back squats. I was just experimenting with them. And Lance and I were like, hey, why don't we use this and do a training study with the powerlifters to improve the 1RM? And that sounded like an exciting idea for both of us. And so after that, we started doing some literature review on it and see what's out there, right? And we found, to our surprise, there was not much done with the eccentric hooks. We found at least 3 studies at that time One of them was done in colleagues in 2002. And they use it as an acute tool to improve one rep performance. And what they did is they used a load of 105 on the eccentric phase, and they tried to improve the one rep performance from that. So 100% on the bar on the concentric phase. So 105 coming down and 100% going up. And they, in average, participants improve about 3 kilograms of the one rep performance. So it was acutely. So it was very, very, very important tool. However, conflicting findings were found by, hopefully I'm saying their last name correctly, Ojastko and Hakinen in 2009. And they used loads between 105 and 120, and they did not improve the concentric strength performance, which they found that the forces were reduced actually when compared to constant 100% eccentric, 100% concentric. So there were conflicting results right there. However, in 2018, that same year that we were just planning this study, paper just came out in the Journal of Training Conditioning and Research, I believe, and it was by Munger and all. And they used a front squat. So they use 3 loads, 3 testing sessions. They use 105 divided by 90. So 105 eccentric, 90 concentric, and then 110 eccentric, 90 concentric, and 120 eccentric, 90 concentric. And they found that the 120 over 90 yielded greater ground reaction force, but no changes in rate of force development. So they showed it was a great tool to improve ground reaction force. So overall force can be improved. So at the time in labs, we're like, okay, so there's conflicting studies with acute effects, and there's one that shows that 120 is better than the other conditions, so 110 or 105. However, this one is with front squat. The other ones are with bench press. So let's try to do a training study with the bench press. And what we ended up doing, we ended up designing like a training mesocycle, and in where we used we started 105 eccentric and 90 concentric, and we use increments of 5% for each session on the eccentric phase. So 105 divided by 90 for the first session, second session, so 110 divided by 90, fourth session, 115 divided by 90, fourth session, 120 divided by 90, and the last session, this fifth session, was 125 divided by 90. So we recruited about 12 participants, and they were all competitive powerlifters, and each one of them was already used to using the eccentric hooks. So our baseline of thermalization was very short. In baseline, we did a warm up. Then we attached the EMG to the pectoralis major, anterior deltoid, and the triceps brachii. After that, we attach for an inertial measuring unit device called the push band to the bar to track bar kinetics and bar kinematics. Subjects were given, we tested 1 RM on baseline session, and then we started our training mesocycle. So 105 divided by 90. Each training session was composed of 7 working sets, and plus we added some, obviously, warm-up and warm-up sets. For those 7 working sets for each conditions, we did a reliability analysis, and we found that all 7 sets were very highly reliable. They were very similar numbers across individuals, which was good. So we ended up using just the average for those. So what happened? The findings for this project, we ended up just with 8 towards the end of the training study. 3 of them did not want it to continue with the study, and then 1 of them got injured, but that injury was not related to her training. I believe she got injured doing deadlift or a back squat. I forget which other lift she was working on a separate session. So that was not related to our training. So we ended up just with 8, so 5 males and 3 females. But anyway, so for this sample, what we found that this mesocycle of eccentric, augmented eccentric overload They all improve the 1RM, obviously in a different magnitude, each one of them, but they all improve. In terms of EMG, we observed that there was no differences among most conditions higher than 125 divided by 90. In that one, we observed that pectoralis major activation decreased, but the anterior deltoid increased. And this makes sense because the hooks, even though they're attached to the bar, they're moving a lot. And the anterior deltoid serves as a stabilizer, but it also helps you on the shoulder abduction and flexion of the arm, right? So that was very interesting. We observed that difference that can be attributed to the hooks just moving to the side, and the athletes had to be able to stabilize that external load. In terms of bar kinetics and bar kinematics, obviously, we observed that the time of the eccentric and concentric duration was lower. Thus, the bar speed got faster. Velocity was greater velocity and greater acceleration. Obviously, power improved. However, most of these findings were either trivial or small. In terms of effect size, the 1RM was moderate. The effect size for that improvement was moderate. So some of the limitations for this study. One, we were unable to take any muscular architecture measurements. So maybe we showed that eccentric overload, augmented eccentric overload improves 1RM, but why does it improve that? We were unable to pinpoint some other mechanisms. So for example, maybe muscular architecture changes, maybe pendational angle changes, or the fascicle length changes. At the time, we weren't able to do those analysis, or maybe there's some Cyrillic biomarker that changes testosterone or IGF-1. Right? We weren't able to do those analysis, and simply because this was done at the training gym. So it was hard for us to take the ultrasound or take some other samples over there. So the training study is limited to that. The second limitation is that we were unable to use sex by sex analysis. So some of the females dropped, as I mentioned before. So we ended up just with 8. It will be good to see how they help sexes react to this type of training again in other population other than just powerlifting. So that's pretty much it. Our study. Some of the practical applications for our studies that a mesocycle, the eccentric overload, so 4 weeks of eccentric overload, on average on this powerlifting population. We saw it at 6.5% of 1RM improvement. So that's a substantial 1RM improvement. And to some anecdotal evidence here is that some of our athletes, or the athletes that participated in the study, mentioned that they've been on a 1RM plateau for several months. And thanks to the training session, they were able to improve the 1RM. So I highly, highly recommend this to experienced lifters. Another, limitation or recommendation is just to try to keep the augmented eccentric load between 105 and 125. Towards the 125 session, we overheard some of the participants complaining about their anterior deltoid getting fatigued. However, we asked them if they were okay, and they all said that they were fine to continue, but it was just minor fatigue towards the 125. So a lot of you must, if you're training at 125 eccentric, you might put take some caution in there. But anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have any questions in regards of this study or any potential collaborations, feel free to contact me at smontalvo, SMONTALVO at utep.edu. So UTEP.edu. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to CoachingCues podcast. If you would like your question to be answered by an expert, please head to coachingcues.org/ask. See you next week.